Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Namaduhu nasalli ala Rasulil Kareem. Viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates what He intends. He creates by His command, be, kun fayakun. When He intends to do something, He doesn't have to move, He doesn't have to do things that human beings do. He commands and it comes into existence. All the heavens and the earth, all the mountains, all the oceans, all that we see and we don't see has been created by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is also called the Qudrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam al-Islam without a father or mother. He created him by His command. And then He created his spouse. And from these two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spread their offspring. That is called the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses His creation and puts into motion, as He did in the case of the human being, the offspring of Adam alayhi salam kept multiplying and continues to do so. This is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah is not dependent on the cause. Allah tabarak wa ta'ala can do without the cause. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the fire to burn. The function of the fire is to burn, but Allah can change the duty of the fire by giving His command. So He commanded the fire to be cool. The fire became cool in the case of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So Allah gives examples both of His qudrat, of His creative power, and also of His sunnat, what the unbelievers called Mother Nature. They call this Mother Nature. They see a process is going on. The rain falls and the crops grow and the whole process is repeated. And they say this is Mother Nature doing all this. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a system which we call the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The male and the female union brings the child, brings the offspring. Planting the seed brings the crops. So all this is the process that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set into motion. And it will continue. But we have to understand that Allah is not dependent. The clouds come and then the rain comes. This is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah tabarak wa ta'ala is all powerful. He tells us in the Quran that He is able to do all things. He created the heavens and the earth and put a system in place. There's a certain system that goes on, and an intelligent person, without seeing Allah with his eyes, knows that there is a very powerful creator behind this. And it has to be only one creator. If there were many creators, there would be conflict in the heavens and the earth. But there's a perfect harmony, there's a perfect system. And any intelligent person would know that this cannot happen by itself. Just like in real life, we know something very complicated. We know somebody must have designed it, somebody must have manufactured it, somebody put a system into it. So this whole universe, this whole creation that we see with our eyes, it cannot happen by itself. So anyone who thinks that just happened is not using his intelligence. Allah tabarak wa ta'ala has given human being intelligence to observe His signs. People think intelligence is given only for the purpose of feeding ourselves, taking care of our physical needs. This is not the only purpose of human intelligence. Human intelligence has been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah has given this human being this test to look at the creation and see whether this can happen by itself. Unfortunately, the modern education system is such that it doesn't even consider that, doesn't even look. They just dismiss this by saying that all this is happening through Mother Nature. But what is Mother Nature? Mother Nature is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mother Nature doesn't have any will of its own. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said it many times. This is all for a purpose. There's a design behind it. He didn't create all this for idle sport. Intelligent people know this by looking at the signs. This is a purpose. There is a purpose behind this. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent prophets to the people, they told the people, they reminded them that they are being tried, they're being tested, and Allah will hold them to account. The people are trustees. The time is a trust from Allah. The resources are trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The bodies are trust from Allah. They will be questioned on the Day of Judgment, how they were used. So all this is reminders to the human race, to the human being, that time is very important. Just imagine a person has a block of ice and he has to sell it before it melts and becomes water. So this life is like a block of ice. It's melting and it has to be sold. And in this case, it has to be sold to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah has given this life, this body, these resources, and Allah is saying, you sell it back to me. Allah is so generous, so merciful. He gives something and then He says, if you sell it back to me, I will give you a better return. So the life belongs to Allah. All the qualities that people have belong to Allah. The only thing is that if they are willing to make a deal with Allah. It is said that there was a saintly person during the time of Harun Rashid by the name of Balol. And people thought he was crazy. He was insane. He would be talking to himself. And one day he was talking to himself. It is said that people asked him, Balol, what are you doing? And he said, I'm trying to make peace. He said, peace between whom? And Balol said, I'm trying to make peace between Allah and the people. So they asked him, what is the result? He said, Allah is willing to make peace, but the people are not willing to make peace. So one day he was seen sitting in a cemetery in a graveyard, talking to himself. And people asked him, what are you doing? He said, I'm trying to make peace. They asked, between whom? He said, between Allah and the people. They asked, what's the result? He said, the result is that people are willing to make peace, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not willing to make peace. So the moral of the story is that when people have an opportunity to turn to Allah and they don't use that opportunity, then they will have regrets. So these stories, all these things that we hear about are designed to make people reflect that life has a purpose. And purpose is not just to amass wealth and to enjoy the luxuries of life. The purpose is something very different. The purpose has to be kept in mind when a student goes to college, university. His purpose is to get a degree. So he will sacrifice his needs to accomplish the purpose. If his need is to eat, to sleep, but he's not going to sleep through the exam or eat through the exam. So if he has to wait, he'll sacrifice his sleep or his food for achieving the purpose. So the human being has needs and has a purpose. The needs are, of course, to feed himself, to clothe, to house. All these are the needs of a human being. This is not the purpose of his creation. The purpose of the creation is to look back to the Creator, why He created him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps reminding in the Quran. And all the prophets came and reminded the people And that's why all the prophets were Muslims, and all the followers of the prophets were Muslims, from the time of Adam al-Islam to the present day and right through to the end of times. Those people who keep this in mind will, inshallah, be successful. And those people who forget why they came into this earth, they will not be successful. That's why the Quran revealed in Surah Asr that everybody is in a state of loss, except those people who have faith, who have iman, and do good deeds, and call others to haqq, to the truth, and remain steadfast. So every day a human being gets up in the morning as one more test, one more paper, and one more opportunity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given time, and time is the most precious commodity. This time will never come back. The day that goes, people celebrate their birthdays and forget that every birthday means 1 year less of the life of that person. It's not a cause of celebration, it's a cause of concern that I'm running out of time. And this is where shaitan comes in and makes us forget that even in tragedies, people forget. He makes people forget and makes them, diverts their attention to some kind of entertainment. When a person dies, this is actually a reminder to other persons who are still alive that this is going to happen to me also. And one day the same thing will be happening to me, and I have to be concerned. And I have to prepare for that. So the death is also a preacher. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, there are two preachers. One is an active preacher, and that is the Quran. And one is the passive preacher, and that is death. So when a person looks at death, it's actually a reminder that this is the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Kullu nafsin zaiqatul maut. Every soul shall taste death. And it is a transition from a temporary life to a permanent life that will never end. And that has needs. That life, human being, will be given a body. Like the soul that we have in this life has a body, but this body will be left behind. It'll be gone. When a person is buried in that grave, this body is finished. But the soul is still alive, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give a new body to the soul according to the deeds of that person. The body we have in this life was not given to us because of our deeds in a previous life. We didn't have any deeds. We were given a body from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala according to His wisdom. If a person is born white or black or any other race, whether it's ugly or beautiful, this is all a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not because of something a person has done in a previous life that he has earned this reward or has been punished. But in the next life, the body will be according to the deeds of the person. A person will be given a beautiful body if he spent his life according to the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he will be given an ugly body, an ugly form, and because of the deeds in this life. And the reward and punishment will be such that this human body, this small body, few feet, 6, 7 feet, whatever, is not big enough either to enjoy the pleasures of paradise or to suffer the pain of hell. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will change the form. The soul will be given a body according to its deeds in this life. So Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala has given this opportunity to every single human being. All that we have in this world will end. The body, the properties, the wealth, everything is temporary for a very short time. That's why the intelligent people of the world know that all we see is, is only for a very short time. It is said somebody asked a wise man, what are the wisest words in the English language? And he replied that the words are, this too will pass away. This too will pass away means nothing that we see is going to remain. As we know, every day, people's bodies are changing, everything, the properties, everything, time is taking a toll. Imagine if you have a tree and you start cutting it with an axe. Every chip that comes off, that means the tree is losing its life. And same is the case with the human being. Every second, every minute that passes is meaning that the time is getting shorter and shorter. This is a matter not of entertainment. It's not the shaitan makes people forget where he's going. This is one of the attacks of the shaitan, to make people forget of the life which is coming and keep them involved in the life which is passing. As somebody gave an example that if you're going on the highway, you look in front of you. You don't look at the back. You look in the rearview mirror just to see occasionally what's going on at the back. But you keep your eyes in the front. Otherwise, there will be an accident. So this is the condition of this present life, that it's passing and something is coming in front of us. And what's coming in front of us is the akhirah. So the Quran calls the life to come is the life called akhirah. And the life that is passing is called the hayat dunya, the life of this world. And the hayat dunya, if it's given preference over the akhirah, then a person will end up being a loser. But if the person is giving preference to the akhirah over the dunya, then a person will emerge as a winner. And it is said about the companions of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that they were smart people, they were wise people. They always had their akhirah in mind. Whatever they did, even though they were running a very successful empire, very successful government, very successful businesses, they were very much involved in affairs of dunya, but they had the akhirah in mind. They were looking at the future. A foolish person, he's looking only in the matters of dunya. He's not looking at what happens in the future. And this is why the Quran is essential for every human being, to keep it reminding that whatever we are doing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is keeping an account of that. If a person is doing business and he doesn't keep his akhirah in mind, even if he makes a lot of money, he may become rich, but he will end up as a loser. If the person has been given power by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing him with that power. And if he doesn't keep his akhirah in mind, he will end up as a loser. And in any human relationship, whatever condition Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put a human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to question him. That's why the companions of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they were all the time mindful of the future, how their actions are going to be evaluated. That's why they're known as the people of the akhirah. The dunya had no concern for them. That's why they did not leave behind any palaces and structures, roads and bridges and things of this dunya. It was of no concern to them. They were focused all the time on what might happen to them in the akhirah. They had so much fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they kept their affairs under check. They were when Umar radiallahu anhu became the Khalifa, his lifestyle, he was a very powerful leader who had thousands of miles under his control, and he had complete power. From today's standards, one would consider that he had absolute control over. There was no separation of powers like executive, like legislative, or judicial. He had complete control over all power. So one would think he would be a dictator, but he had so much power. He had so much fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was the biggest check. Today we have all these systems, separation of powers, and parliamentary system, and presidential system, and elections. And with all these systems, there is no fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and people still do corruption and get away with it. But the biggest check on the companions, on the rightly guided caliphs, was not the separation of powers or the judiciary. It was the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they showed the world that if you rule under divine law, then everybody is safe. And if you do not rule under divine law, then nobody is safe. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us understand the reality. Wa akhir dawana in alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.